Much everyone for coming down, and for those of you who have joined us online from various places. This is an opportunity, one of the points at which we can meet during the week and reset our goals. This morning, when I was walking in my neighborhood, I left my house on Chanting Road and headed up towards Washington Park in Burlingame. And all the way there, I noticed how there's a natural tendency for everyone to set some goal. For instance, as I was about a block from the park along the sidewalk in a cul-de-sac, it ends at the park. The houses there don't have to contend with much traffic, so a lot of kids play on that block. And one of the games they play is with colored chalk. They draw images on the ground. Do they do that in your neighborhood too? It's become quite popular. And they're quite creative. Today I saw a long series of directions to follow as I walked up the sidewalk. One of them said, from here, skip. And then it came to the next point, it said, from here, hop. And then he said, now take a rest and walk naturally. And as it went through about 5 stages, it came finally to a hopscotch that you had to go through. I didn't do all of them, I have to admit. I may go back tomorrow if it's still there. And then I went a little further and I got into the park and I saw that people were playing basketball. And I was thinking, if I was from another planet and I just landed and I saw how intent people were throwing a ball again and again to try to get it through a hoop, I would think this is a very serious matter here on this planet. And also there were others on the other side of the court guarding a person to make sure that they didn't get in and put the round ball through the hoop. And then I got a little further and there was a bocce ball court. Anybody know what that is? Really? Pretty good. And it's always interesting to me to observe a sporting activity that I know nothing about because it completely objectifies the sport. For instance, when I was in Australia years ago, for the first time, a friend of mine picked me up at the airport and said, we're stopping at a cricket match on the way home. I'd never been to one before, and I'm afraid to admit this in front of many of you that I know nothing about cricket, except that you can hit something like a home run and there's a bat involved. And I sat there in abject boredom because I didn't know what the rules were or what the objective of the game was, and also because I'd never played it before. I couldn't relate to it. I didn't know any of the heroes. I didn't have a jersey to wear that had the name of a particular player on it or anything like that. And at every segment of my walk, of course I am near a high school and a park, I saw some way in which people were aiming for something, and they had made up a lot of different arenas in which to do that. I mean, who makes up the rules that become so serious that people will, after observing a game and there's some dispute about whether somebody touched the base first, did the ball get there fast enough, or did they actually step on the line? People become heated and so forth. We're concerned as humans with a goal and how to step through various hoops and attain something. And if we don't have something tangible, we'll make something up. In fact, we'll make a bunch of things up to do all day long to keep ourselves preoccupied, because that's our natural inclination. So as I was driving here today, I was thinking, oh, what do we do when we're here? And what do we do after we leave? And someone had asked me yesterday, after coming here, what do I do now? What are my next steps? And so we need next steps in order to be satisfied. And if we don't have a clear idea of what the ultimate goal, I don't know what it is about ultimate goals, but when I write in Word, the spell check always says, don't say ultimate goal, just say goal. And it's like, no, I want to say ultimate goal at some point. It always checks it and says, do you mean ultimate goal? Can you put the two things together? But this is one of the teachings of the wisdom literatures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, there are many goals, but there's one ultimate goal. And not knowing that puts us at a major disadvantage. We'll go for all the small goals in life. And we can get absorbed in very tiny subject matter in the way of physics. I can look into particles and go deeper within them. And I can think in a macro sense about the universe and so forth. But unless there's a clear idea of what the purpose of life is, which gives me a context for an ultimate goal, why am I here and where am I going, then my great endeavor to reach many goals is for naught. N-A-U-G-H-T, naught. I just thought that on the way here, so I figured I'd bring it up. Do you have any reflections on that before I go to the next part? Yes? Ashraya Madhava. Prabhu, we have a plethora of microphones. How many is a plethora? It's a multitude? Better find out. See if
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Today I was trying to fill my sadhana card. And I saw that
sadhana card, just for anybody who's listening, is a grid upon which someone who is practicing bhakti yoga would record how many of the bhakti practices he or she is doing in a given day. For instance, there's chanting, which is one of the practices of, sorry, don't mind, with chanting, which is one of the practices of bhakti. We repeat a mantra. And the mantra is comprised of sacred names of our original conscious source, Krishna. And when we do that, as an example, we count how many times we chant the mantra on beads that look like this, exactly like this. And also, there's another set of beads on the side. These are called counter beads. And every time we chant a mantra, we pull down a chant, one round. We go all the way around the string of beads and chant mantras, we pull one down. So there's a counting process that goes on. There are other practices in bhakti, but when Ashraya Madhava Prabhu was mentioning filling out or filling in a sadhana card, he's talking about is recording how many bhakti activities he's doing in a day. Sadhana means bhakti practice. Yes. All right, please go ahead.
Thank you, Prabhu, for giving the context to everyone. So there is one field there called goals, and I was thinking goal or goals, and kind of pointing to what you are trying to give the context. And I was thinking in terms of there could be many, like there could be a goal like I want to chant, all the 16 rounds completely absorbed in the mantra, but not thinking about anything else at all. Could be a very lofty goal, basically. So, but there could be a goal, sub-goal, like I should be able to do it at least the first 16 times of one round without any thought. That could be a sub-goal. So I was thinking in the context you gave, like, sub goal versus the ultimate goal. I was thinking like that.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, when we have an ultimate goal and then we have various practices to proceed towards the goal, then we can break them down into a variety of different categories. Somebody else had their hand up. Okay, now I want to show you the goals of the organization we're in. This is called ISKCON. ISKCON means the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So the founder of this organization is Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And here you see his image sitting on this very ornate seat called a Vyasasana. So one of the names of Krishna or God is Vyas. He's a literary incarnation who makes available the knowledge in writing and passes it down. And anyone who represents Vyas is given a seat of honor called the Vyasasana. Asana means a seat. And someone who spreads that knowledge and makes it available to many people is considered to be a great teacher or an acharya. So one such great teacher or acharya is we call Prabhupada. He's the founder of ISKCON. And here are the 7 purposes of ISKCON, since we're talking about the purposes and goals in life, and the overarching goals of this organization are as follows. 1, to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. 10 means love, 1 means hate. What do you give it? 10? 11? Okay. It's a fairly enticing statement, isn't it? In fact, I used to carry this on a little printed card, and when I'd meet people who asked me, well, what do you do? I'd hand them this card and say, I'm following this edict to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all people in techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. 2, to propagate a consciousness of Krishna as he is revealed in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So when the founder of this organization was incorporating the society, someone recommended, why don't you call it the International Society for God Consciousness? He said that would be more universal sounding. And Prabhupada's reply was that actually we're doing something specific. But you don't lose universality when you go into specifics either, because when you look at the definition of Krishna, you'll find that he is the origin or the source from which everything else emanates. And he contains within him all the features of God. And when one has that much of a specific understanding of the source of everything, then one has a goal for the mind and for one's meditational practice. And therefore, we're propagating a consciousness of Krishna. The name Krishna means all attractive. And we're always attracted to something. But if we are able to put our attention on the source of all the attractive features that we're looking for, then we have a perfect goal. 3, to bring the members of the society together with each other and nearer to Krishna. Do you feel like we're doing that now to some degree? And thus to develop the idea, and thus to develop the idea within the members and humanity at large that each soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one of the practices and the goals of the organization itself is to bring people together. And that's why we have this building. We needed a central point. We did an experiment over the last year and a half, didn't we all? Maybe it's more than a year and a half now, I don't know. We tried it out. And there's a difference between being at home and practicing by yourself, is there not? And getting together in one place. It actually helps. And oftentimes, and there are many places in ISKCON in which there's facility for people to come and live under the same roof and practice together starting early in the morning. And this is the meaning of this objective or purpose of ISKCON, is to bring people together so that they can be nearer to Krishna. I lived inside temples for many years, and when I go back and stay at various ISKCON centers, for instance in Toronto, they very graciously allow me to stay there in the temple, and they put me on the 3rd floor in a room that I'm next to a Prabhupada museum. And I can also hear the bells ringing in the temple, and at intervals there's a conch that blows. It's part of the service. And I always feel grounded because I'm in the spiritual environment, and you can hear the artiks going on, and therefore I'm nearer to Krishna. And I can also smell the incense, and then whenever Krishna eats, afterwards everyone else eats. So we're pretty much close to Krishna in that environment, and it's very nice. And so bringing members of the society together with each other and nearer to Krishna, and thus they're able to develop the idea within the members and humanity at large that each soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is very technical language, but what it means actually is that although we have our own individual consciousness, we're part of the original consciousness. And we have our individual identity in relationship with the complete whole, or the source of our consciousness. Number 4, to teach and encourage the Sankirtan movement, congregational chanting of the holy name of God, and to reveal the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is an important one because we often look for formulas in life. In fact, I heard the other day, and I resonated with this statement, that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a formula is worth 1,000 pictures. And therefore, people like Coca-Cola, because apparently there's a secret formula. And they don't know what it is, but they're intrigued by it. And it's probably not because they think it tastes good, because I doubt that it does. So there's a formula for success in human life, and especially for this particular time period, which is mentioned in the wisdom literatures, which is very nice to know. And the formula is that if you perform a kind of spiritual practice called Sankirtan, then you'll get all the benefits of all the various spiritual practices that are mentioned throughout all of the wisdom literatures. There are thousands, tens of thousands of suggestions about what to do and what not to do. And if you practice this one formula, which is to gather together with your family in your house, or bring your relatives or your neighbors, and or in a place like this, and we may just try it out in a minute, if you're up for it, the chanting. Yeah? And you chant together with a call and response, then you're performing what's called the formula, which is meant for this age, and it's called the Yuga Dharma. And that means you can get all the results that you're looking for in spiritual practice from this one activity. So we do this here In fact, one of the first things we checked when we got this building was the acoustics. They're not so bad. There are some places where it's difficult to abide by the echoes, and we try to adjust that because we do a lot of singing and chanting. We also take it outside. For instance, on a regular basis, we go down to Lytton Plaza, Lytton Square. That's in Palo Alto on University Avenue. And there we hold a festival where we sing and chant, just as it's mentioned here as one of the purposes of the organization. And lots of people who had intended to go elsewhere are waylaid by the joyful sounds of the Kirtan, and they stop, and they'll dance, and sometimes they stay, and sometimes they never leave. Our Vaisesika was walking down the street in Palo Alto, heard the Kirtan, then came here and never left. So the next is 5, to erect for the members and the society at large a holy place of transcendental pastimes dedicated to the personality of Godhead. So this has been done in many places. For instance, in Vrindavan, India, which is the place where Krishna appeared, there's a marvelous temple that was built and opened in 1975. I was there for the opening. And it was meant so that all of us living here in Silicon Valley could, at intervals, go there. And there's a guest house, and there is a town that you can walk around and see all the places where Krishna performed his Leela or pastimes. And so that's one of the purposes of the organization. And now there are many, many places that you can go to where temples have been erected so that you can stay there and you can be in the practice for a little while. Next is number 6. To bring the members closer together for the purpose of teaching a simple and more natural way of life. And number 7, with a view towards achieving the aforementioned purposes, to publish and distribute periodicals, magazines, books, and other writings. I repeat, with a view towards achieving the aforementioned purposes, to publish and distribute periodicals, magazines, books, and other writings. Make sure anyone who's coming in is properly situated and has a seat, please. Somebody who's on this. Thank you. To that end, here at ISKCON Silicon Valley, when we created the environment inside here a few years ago, we took everything out except for this floor, which is very nice, and put in a new kitchen. And one of the second largest room in the building is in the middle of the structure, and it's a book room. We store thousands and thousands of books there, but they don't stay long because we take them out to distribute to others. And why do we do that? It's one of the main purposes of our organization. So I thought I'd just orient us all to the reason that we're here and the reason that this society, the purpose for which it exists. And before we experiment with the formula, the spiritual formula that was mentioned here as one of the purposes, I thought I'd just take any reflections about the 7 purposes or any questions that you might have. Yes, Manjula Ganta.
Guru Maharaj, I noticed that in this list of purposes, Srila Prabhupada specifically avoids naming places like temples, preaching centers. He doesn't call it by a name, he calls it by a purpose. Was that purposefully done to give us more flexibility? Or?
Yes. It's very purposely worded. The more I read it, the more I see how Prabhupada was so, his vision for the organization and the way he articulated it was very purposeful and absolutely brilliant. it's very helpful, and it also gives enough of a scope so that people from any culture can appreciate it. Anything else that you noticed about the 7 purposes?
One more thing I did
Yes.
notice was the books. When I read through the 7 purposes, I noticed that they cover all the books that you ask us to read. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, the Nectar of Instruction, it covers Chaitanya Charitamrita. All our top books are covered in all the 7
covered?
sections.
Nice. It's a good way to see it. Yes.
Prabhu, I'm not too sure if you already mentioned, but the 7th purpose covers everything else. So doing book distribution, you're literally covering all the parts of all the other 6.
Yeah, I don't know if, I think the verb he uses is achieving. So in order, with a view towards achieving the aforementioned purposes, to publish and distribute periodicals, magazines, books, and other writings, gives us a real wide berth, a very wide berth of purpose towards doing that activity of printing and distributing books, because it brings in all the aforementioned purposes. So yeah, it's really important. Okay, let's chant. I'll start with a couple of prayers, and then we'll chant the Hare Krishna mantra, which is the most recommended mantra for the present age. Where is it recommended? Well, in the Kali Santarana Upanishad, one of the ancient scriptures, there's mention by name of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, saying that in order to derive all the benefits, spiritual benefits in the age of Kali Yuga, you should chant this particular mantra. And it's also a mantra that was highly recommended by all the previous teachers, especially coming down from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who taught the process of Bhakti Yoga very widely. And all the followers since then have recommended and re-recommended this Hare Krishna mantra. So it's a highly supported mantra by all the ancient wisdom literatures and the great teachers. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. And now we're going to turn to the Bhagavad Gita. Now that we've opened up all the channels, because if all else fails, chant Hare Krishna, and hint, everything else will fail. So don't be alarmed. So this is something we'll hear now from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in which there's a very important conversation going on in which we get to listen in between Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who just happens to be the chariot driver of Arjuna, the greatest warrior of the time, who entered into a battle, was about to, and then lost his bearings and needed guidance. And this starts with Arjuna asking Krishna, his teacher, about how one can observe in oneself or others a gradual increase in spiritual advancement. So what are the symptoms? They should be verifiable, and they should be universal as well, because there's only one ultimate source. And if one is practicing any kind of spiritual system or a discipline that is effective, then we should be able to say, what are the symptoms of that? So that's where this discussion starts. And in it, Arjuna asked the question at 254, right? Yes. He says, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk?" And in his commentary, called the Purport to this verse, Prabhupada, again our founder who gave us the books through which to guide this organization, said, "As there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known to be known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms. So a man is in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said, therefore, that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptoms of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow as stated below. So, if you go back to the Zoom, I'd appreciate it, because there's people, devotees on there, and it's, when we can't see them, it puts me in anxiety. Thank you. So, in this, right? Better connection. Just knowing they're back there and then I can't see them, it makes me wonder how they are. So, there's a question that Arjuna asks: what are the symptoms of somebody who's fixed in consciousness? So the terminology there is sthita prajna. And that means, sthita means that they're stable. They're steady, they can stand somewhere. And then he asks, how does he sit, how does he walk, how does he speak? And so these are general terms about sitting and walking. It doesn't mean exactly how you sit in a chair or on the floor, but it means really how it is that you're situated in life in general. And there are various symptoms of somebody who's situated in transcendental consciousness. Their lifestyle is different. And also, when one wants to become spiritually advanced and be in the practice, then there's a way of adjusting one's lifestyle so that one gradually begins to mold one's consciousness in that direction also. So this is an important point. Those who are interested in spiritual life gravitate towards an atmosphere in which they can stay close to Krishna. That's why one of the purposes of ISKCON was to create an environment where people could come together and be close to Krishna. And those who are advancing in spiritual practice start to, plan their lives around being in places where they can be closer to those who are practicing Krishna consciousness, and they also reorganize their homes. Not a bad idea anyway. I once read in Reader's Digest about 30 years ago that it was an article about relationships, and it said if you want to improve your relationship at home, you can rearrange the furniture. You can try it if you need it. So there's a way in which if you want to be Krishna conscious, you can rearrange the furniture. I know a lot of Krishna conscious devotees, thankfully, who, when looking for a place to live, and they're examining houses or apartments or vans, I don't know, it depends where you live, they're looking to see where will we put Krishna here. So that means in every house there's a way that there's a special room or a place where people either keep a picture of Krishna or a little what's called a murti, the form, carved form of the Lord. and that it's their sacred place, even if it's tiny. Sometimes I've seen really beautiful little spaces in closets. It's the only place, it's a studio, and then, okay, this closet's for Krishna, and they make it really nice. So you open the door, it's like, hey, Krishna's in here. And also, devotees like to keep the Srimad Bhagavatam in their house. Last night, I had the fortune of being on a program in Mayapur with His Holiness Jaipataka Maharaj, and he was talking about how when you put these sacred literatures in your house, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, then your whole house becomes transcendentalized. It becomes a worshipable place. And if you don't have any of those things, then it's really easy to gravitate towards other things, right? Like what would those be? Like distraction. Huh? Television is like a black hole. You turn it on and you go down the hole, you come back out 48 years later, and it's like, what happened? I got swallowed up. I went down the hole and I came back later. It was like, what year is it now? It can be dangerous. Not that it can't be also utilized. Anything can be used for thinking of Krishna and practicing Krishna consciousness, including a television or anything else. But one of the ways in which those who are in spiritual consciousness are situated is in how they keep their homes. And also, there's a lot of direction in the Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere that one should live in cleanliness. So keeping the home clean and without a lot of clutter. I was surprised today how many, I just recently decluttered my whole room, got everything the way I need it, and then a few days later, it's not where I need it. And there's a lot of extra stuff. Does that happen to anybody else? Or is it just me? Yeah, things sneak in every door, window, and come in there. And like, where'd that come from? Now, where's it going to live? And so forth. And do I actually need it? So that's a constant struggle. Or it's a part of the discipline, actually, to live in an orderly environment. Because if you live in chaos, which means you have a lot of things out of place that you don't need and so forth, it's really easy to get distracted. So how does one sit? One who's situated in the spiritual practice is somebody who trends towards living in a way and in a place that is conducive to the spiritual practice. So that's something you can look into. And it's worth the trouble to be clean. It takes a lot of work. You constantly have to clean things and start over every day, actually. If you really want to be clean, at least do some simple cleaning. Then, how does one walk? If you think about it, where am I walking anyway? And we can include driving on 4 wheels or more. I want to discriminate against truck drivers. If you drive a big truck and you have more wheels, where are you going? And why? Where are you going and why? That's indicative of our consciousness, because we can ambulate, most of us, and means we can move towards certain destinations in life, and one might stop and ask oneself, well, where am I going right now? And why am I going there? What am I going to do when I get there? And that's also indicative of our level of consciousness. So a person who's in spiritual consciousness will be wary and careful about where he or she is going. Because what are you going to do when you get there? What's the purpose of going there? And once I get there, is it going to help me? So then the third one, which Prabhupada mentions in his purport is the most important and indicative of one's level of consciousness, is how he or she speaks. And when somebody is fixed in consciousness, that person is careful about what he or she says and thinks about whether it's going to be beneficial and whether it's truthful and whether it actually helps my cause and my practice. So there is a way of speaking that isn't helpful. For instance, talking about things that are not important or not true or just blatantly unkind. And I found a rule that helps me when I think about it is to not say everything that's on my mind. Because my mind oftentimes brings up things and says, hey, how about this? You want to say that? And then I'll just say, well, I'm cutting back. And I'm cutting back by 20%. 20% fewer things I say that are on my mind than I did yesterday. And then it's like, okay, you don't have to say that. And you know what I found? Is that it saves a lot of trouble. Because there's a lot of things that I can bring up then just get amplified into the environment. Once I went to a retreat, and for one of the days of the retreat, there was no talking. Just go, oh my God. And that's what everyone said, because on the way to the retreat, everyone was saying, well, we're here for 3 days, and you know, the one thing I'm afraid of is that one day when there's no talking. And just the prospect of having one day with no talking can help us to realize how much we do talk. And then one might go through a day like that and come out on the other side, that is a day of no talking, and then realize, oh, that was actually a little easier. In fact, one of the participants in the retreat said, you know, all the time I'm meeting people as I walk around and they're saying things to me, and then I have to think. It's an elaborate thought process. What should I say and how should I say it? And that reverberates throughout my life. Now, I'm not indicating don't talk. But I am saying that if we're observant about the way we talk, and we're careful to be disciplined in our speech, then we'll notice how much the mind brings up that isn't worth speaking. The old saying, he had nothing to say, and then he said it. And so that starts a whole process which entangles us more and more in the world. Anavriti Shabdat means that the world and my consciousness can be purified through sound vibration. So the bhakti process actually starts with speech. And we tried out the chanting. And just by chanting every day, either in this Kirtan style or practicing what is called japa, sitting and chanting oneself, or pacing and chanting to oneself on beads, or counting in another way, one will start to notice by generating that sound vibration, we start to experience steadiness in consciousness. So what does it mean? What are the next symptoms? So as Krishna goes further, he starts to talk about the person who's come to steady consciousness and how he or she reacts to the world. And one of the first points he makes is they don't. They do, but they do in a very measured way. There may be auspicious or inauspicious events that happen in their life, but they don't become disturbed by them. This is called a Sthita Dhir Muni. A Muni, a great thinker, a yogi, a person who's controlled his or her mind. And Shubha Ashubha means sometimes we get what's called auspicious news. Like if you heard just now, you got a text and you're trying not to look at it because you're sitting in the class. But then you just glance at your eyes and it's one of your family members just wrote and said, you know, we just won the lottery. I don't know why that would happen, because you don't gamble, I guess. But, you know, somebody says, guess what, we just won the lottery, and it's $50 million. So would you get up out of class? No, you wouldn't? Okay, good. You're a Sthita Dhir Muni. Or if you heard some very disturbing news, of course, something happened to someone, would your mind become disturbed in that way also? So what Krishna says in this section about the symptoms of somebody who's a Stita Dhir Muni is that he or she, whether hearing really good news or bad news, news is news in the material world. It's all of this in the same category. It's the goings-on of the interactions of the material elements. And ultimately, they have nothing to do with me. This is actually the perspective of someone who's fixed in consciousness. And therefore, such a person is not disturbed by the good news, the bad news. It's all in one category, breaking news, which breaks your concentration from Krishna consciousness. So this is the symptom of a Stita Dhir Muni. Now, how does one attain that? Through the practice of bhakti yoga. Where is this stated? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is arguably the most important of all the books that we have for learning the process of bhakti yoga, it says, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayara Haitukam. This means that when you do the direct processes of devotional service, and one of them is chanting, and the other one is listening. These are activities that you can do naturally. We already do them. We sing something, we say something, or we listen to something. Generally, these are take up most of the time in each one of our days. And if you dedicate that process of hearing and then speaking to saying something transcendental and hearing something transcendental, you're doing a direct process of bhakti. And what happens from that, doing a direct connection with Krishna through the process of bhakti, then you get a natural sense of perspective through which you can give up bad habits. They don't stick to you anymore. Have you ever noticed how bad habits can stick to you all of a sudden and then you just can't shake them off? You try to get rid of them and then, or worse, you know they're there, but you don't want to get rid of them? Yeah? So if you chant, you get both things. You get this sense like, I don't want this anymore, and I'm going to get rid of it. And you also get the strength, the wherewithal to let it go, let it float off. And you don't have that burden anymore. Doesn't that sound good? And one can see this for oneself. This is something where we can read from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and understand how we can observe ourselves and see, is this process working for me? It has to work. Because if it's just philosophy or we're just socializing and so forth, then you can join the Lions Club or the Rotary, for that matter. Same result. But if you want actual self-realization, then you have to take up the direct processes of bhakti yoga so that you can feel for yourself that you're developing in these ways. You're becoming more detached from bad habits. You're more self-directing. And also, you're getting insight into who you are. Now, that's the next point I want to make before we break for some reflections or questions. And that is the second benefit you get from doing the direct processes of devotional service, especially chanting Hare Krishna. And that is you get what's called Gyan. So where does that come from? The nature of the self, or the Atma, is that we are self-luminous. Now, you can bring up the example of a candle. Is a candle self-luminous? Is a candle flame, so I know you got me on that one. Is a candle flame self-luminous? Yes. Does a candle know that it's self-luminous? No, it doesn't. So the Atma, or the self, illuminates, and it has potencies. It can expand itself outwardly, just like a magnet. A magnet has a force field through which it can attract things, and it can also repel, depending on the charge. Is this correct, Balaram? Okay. And similarly, the difference between us and a candle flame is that we are aware and can become aware of our own nature. A candle can't. We can also we expand our energy and project it in various ways. And so the reason that when I'm situated in a particular body, that I become attached to the body. Is anybody here attached to their body? Okay. Anybody didn't raise your hand, see me afterwards? Because I'd like to ask you for a donation. As oftentimes we actually hold on to everything in relationship to the body. And so the wisdom literatures say that the reason that I'm attached to the body and I appreciate the body is because the Atma, or that self-illuminating particle of consciousness, is pervading the body. And when I project myself into the body and then I observe it, there's a phenomena called ahankara, or false ego, in which I perceive that I am my body. And this is the source of all my difficulties here in the world. This is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, Bhayam dvitiya abhinibeshita syad, that I become fully absorbed in all the activities of the body because I'm in the body, I'm illuminating the body by consciousness, I see that illumination, and then I take that illuminated entity that I'm in to be myself, including my mind and my intellect and so forth. And so when one chants Hare Krishna, one gets the wherewithal to see the difference between the body and the self-luminous self, or the Atma. What's more, there's more, one can also perceive as an Atma the source of one's consciousness. And this is important because we're not independent. We're not all pervading. We pervade within this body. Our consciousness pervades this body, but my consciousness doesn't pervade your bodies. I don't feel the kind of pain you're feeling from sitting on the ground right now, maybe. Like maybe you wish you were in a chair. And I can't perceive that. Sometimes I can, and then therefore I say, there's an empty chair over there, and hoping somebody gets the hint. You don't have to sit on the floor. But I can't really feel it. I can feel what I'm going through. But there is a consciousness, the original consciousness, which is called the complete whole, or Krishna, personified consciousness of Krishna that pervades everybody. It's universal intelligence that some people come to know. It's coming from a person, and that person pervades everything and is within our hearts. And therefore, when we chant Hare Krishna, we become aware not only of our identity beyond the body as self-luminous, and we also become aware of our source. And there's one more benefit of seeing yourself, and that is the self is naturally joyful. It's one of our natures. So if you're not joyful right now, snap out of it. Because it means that our real identity is being covered. And actually, remarkably, there's mention in the ancient Upanishads about sleep and how that relates to this topic of self-realization. There are 3 general levels of consciousness that we go through in one day's cycle. And that is awakened consciousness, which is what we're in right now, I hope. Please say yes. And then there's sleep with dreams. And then there's sleep without dreams. This is very deep sleep. And one of the ways in which the bhakti philosophers point out that there's an individual entity is that when we go to, and that it's beyond the identity of this body, is that when we go to sleep and we enter into deep sleep without dreams, it's not that we're not conscious. It's just that we're conscious of nothing at that point. There's nothing to be conscious of because the ego, the false ego that I described that it connects us to this body, dissolves in very deep sleep. And then we become aware in that state of our joyful nature and also our proximity to our original conscious source that maintains us. And that's why when we come out of deep sleep, we're the ones that have a memory and we say, oh, I feel refreshed. I slept very deeply, even though we don't remember any dreams. This, the Bhakti philosophers point to, and they say, this is an important, pivotal point in the philosophy to understand how we are individual units of consciousness. And so when you, at the end of a day, do you ever feel frustrated? How about in the middle of the day? Hey, how about starting the day? So what do? Go to sleep, especially at the end of the day. Because once you go into that very deep sleep, you come out refreshed. Why? Because you got a little ananda, a little sense of ananda, a little taste, enough to wet your beak. And then you come out and you feel refreshed and you start over with the endeavors. However, even when you're in awakened consciousness, if you chant Hare Krishna, you can experience that what's called ananda, or the joy of the self, even while you're awake. And that's why it's so nourishing if you sit and chant Hare Krishna at any time of the day. Afterwards, you go, okay, I feel a little better about myself, about the world. I see how things fit together. I understand that what I thought was so bad is not so bad. Actually, I'm not even such a bad person myself. And you can move on. What to speak of if you start to develop that practice, then that sense of ananda or joy begins to emerge. You also start to have a persistent awareness of the source of your consciousness. And that source is called Krishna, and therefore this is called Krishna consciousness. So anybody can do this. Now, I was reading in one Shastra means an ancient scripture, and it mentioned one famous teacher was saying, so how hard is it to turn off the false ego? The false ego is identifying with the body and says, woe is me, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I don't like the way my hair looks, that's what my problem was. So, and then yeah, before I became a monk, it was straight. And then when I grew my hair out once after 13 years, it came out curly. And I said, I don't like that. I'm going to cut it off again. So where was I? I digress. Huh? Yeah, the false ego. What about the false ego? Yeah. So this ancient sage says, he said, how hard is it to turn off the false ego? Are you ready? He said, it's easier than plucking a flower. He said, no, it's easier than blinking your eyes. Try blinking your eyes once. Did you do it? Blink your eyes, yeah. He says, easier than that. So then he says, why don't you do it? It's like, I don't want to. And therefore, there's a principle in spiritual practice called simplicity. It means just do it. Knock it off. Just become Krishna conscious already. I can't do. How do I do that? Who is it? Just do it. You're an Atma. You're part and parcel of Krishna. Stop asking so many questions and just become Krishna conscious. And don't be so attached to stupid things. So that's helpful advice, I think, I hope. But the foundation of it all is to find a way in which to integrate the practice, the direct processes of bhakti into your life. And here, I'll leave it at this. Chant Hare Krishna. If you try this mantra and you chant it privately, test it out on yourself and see how it goes, and try to remain steady in chanting. And also arrange so that you can get together with groups of people who are serious about Krishna consciousness and chant with them. And you'll notice that your life improves. The second thing is read Bhagavad Gita. If you read the Bhagavad Gita every day, then your intelligence will become purified, and then you'll think of good things to do, and you'll make better decisions throughout the day, and your life will start to go in an upward direction, upward towards the spiritual world, the dimension beyond just this boring material world. And third, be careful what you eat. Because when you eat food that's cooked with love and devotion and first offered to Krishna before you eat it, then you purify your consciousness. And if you eat junk, then your mind will be full of junk. Junk means food cooked by people who are not in good consciousness. Their consciousness goes into the cooking, into the food. When you eat it, then you start feeling jada buddhi. Your mind starts to feel like a rock. So eat food cooked by spiritually advanced people, and that's offered first to Krishna. And if you do these three things, then you'll become a stita prajna, fixed in consciousness, and you know it for yourself, and you'll be happy, and then you'll go around making other people happy, and your life will be complete success. Om Tat Sat. Thank you. And now, how about if we chant a little more? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Where's Sadhu? Get a mic. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Haribo.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Bolo. Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go Premanande, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Thank you very much, everyone. Now we're going to have a wild dancing party. So we're going to move the mats out of the way and even this rug so that we got this place specially for the floor. This is a dancing floor. Marble doesn't make it, but wood does. It's very soft, kind of soft, and it's flexible. So we'll stand up and we'll observe the beautiful Artik ceremony. And we'll have a kirtan now, but we can sway or dance with abandon as you wish, or sit and dance within your mind as you like. Thank you very much. And then after that, there'll be announcements, and we'll be feeding everyone in San Mateo, Santa Clara, Contra Costa, Alameda. What else? San Francisco counties. Everyone's welcome. Text them, tell them to come on down. We'll feed them. Thank you. Isn't there a fourth part? No? It's too high, though. Okay. Yeah, please. Thank you. How's it go? Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Right, okay. We got a lot of tunes churning right now. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Hey, Madhuri. You want to play a drum? Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Get a mic. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jaya. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai. Radha Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Radha Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Govinda.
Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya.
Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai.
Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Radha Hari Govinda. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai. Govinda Jai Jai, Gopala Jai Jai. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai. Govinda. Jai.
Gopala Jai Jai.
Govinda Jai Jai.
Jai Gopala Jai Jai.
Govinda Jai Jai. Radha.
Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai.
Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Radha Ramana Hari Govinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Sri Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Itai Gaura Haribo, 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 Itai Gaura Haribo. Itai Gaura Haribo, 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 Itai Gaura Haribo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privrajagacharjashto Taristashi Shimad Abai Charana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privrajagacharjashto Taristashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Garadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrini Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Navaditam Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Sambheda Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Go Premanande Hari 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 Bol. Nam Smarna in here? Nam Smarnam? No. Not here? Outside. Dear Shri Shri Lakshmi Nrsingadev, if you so desire, please keep our dear Gauri safe and at your lotus feet always. Thank you for considering our request. Hare Krishna. You want the drum? Or you want the kartals? You want to play the drum or kartals? Put it the other way.
Namaste Narasingaya Praladadahine Hiranyakashipu Rakshava Sri Lankan Kalatalaye Sri Lankan Kalatalaye Hitor Narshingo Parator Narshingo Hitor Narshingo Parator Narshingo Yato Yato Yami Tator Narshingo Yato Yato Yami Tator Narshingo Dahe Narshingo Ridahe Narshingo Narsingamadim Charanam Prapate Tavakara Kamalavade Naka Adbhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tano Brinda Keshavadeta Narahari Rupa Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Keshavadeta Narhari Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Narsingadev, 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 Jaya Narsingadev. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Nitya Gora Haribo, 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 Nitya Gora Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Narsingh Bhagavan ki Jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. We welcome you all to the Sunday Feast program. We'd like to thank His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu for the wonderful Kirtan and the class today. Also, thank you, Madha, for leading a wonderful Nishingadev prayers. Without any further ado, we'll proceed to acknowledge and honor all the generous sponsors who made this program and this feast possible. The first is Tapan, Anna, and Avian. They're sponsoring on the occasion of their Griha Pravesha ceremony. Tapan and Avian, are you here? Oh.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Dhanvat pranams. So Krishna has been very merciful on us that he gave us a new home, and extra merciful because Ansupriya Mataji and Radha Vallabh Prabhu are our next door neighbors. So we... So we just consider ourselves very fortunate, and we are grateful that under their guidance and with their association, we can grow on our spiritual journey in Krishna consciousness. And our son Avyan will be on the right track. He can follow them. So thank you. Please keep us in your prayers that we keep growing in this journey, and we have a lot of devotees coming to our home. Hare Krishna.
We also have Pushpavati Mataji, who's the wife of Dhanyala Narasimha Rao, who is sponsoring this feast on the occasion of her husband's first death anniversary.
నాకు ఇంగ్లీష్ రాదు. నో ఇంగ్లీష్, తెలుగు. ఓకే. మా హస్బెండ్ 1 year చనిపోయి 14.
She just mentioned that her husband passed away a year ago, and she really cannot speak English, and she'd like to speak in Telugu.
మా వారు చనిపోయి 1 year అవుతుంది. ఈ గుడి గురించి గొప్పగా చెప్పారు మా అమ్మాయి. అందుకని చెప్పి నేను ఇక్కడికి వచ్చి ఇక్కడ ఇదంతా చూసి ఇక్కడ అందరికీ మా వారి తరపున అన్నదానం చేయాలనుకుని నేను స్వామివారికి సమర్పిస్తున్నాను.
She just wanted to sponsor the
వారి
feast.
ఎక్కడున్నా ఆయన ఆత్మ సంతృప్తిగా ఉండాలని కోరుకుంటున్నాను.
Yeah, she just
ఆయన
wanted.
పేరు మీద నేను ఈ కార్యక్రమాన్ని జరిపించాలనుకుంటున్నా. మీకు అర్థం కాలేదు, మీరు నవ్వుతున్నారని నాకు తెలుసు.
Okay. So she just wanted to mention that actually she is aunt of Anuradha Challa Mataji's husband, and she's visiting to meet him. So she told her that it's going to be a wonderful temple, and you can seek blessings for her husband. So she's asking for, prayers and blessings for her husband who passed away last year.
మాది ఇండియా. నేను ఇక్కడ మా పాప ఉంటే వచ్చాను.
Yeah, she's come to meet her daughter.
నేను ఇక్కడికి వస్తాను, ఇక్కడ ఇలాంటి కార్యక్రమం ఒకటి చేస్తాను అని నేను అసలు అనుకోలేదు.
She was not too sure that she'd be actually getting to
నేను
do this.
ఇక్కడికి రావటం జరిగింది, ఇక్కడ ఈ కార్యక్రమాన్ని జరిపించడం జరిగింది. మీ అందరూ ముందుండి ఈ కార్యక్రమాన్ని చాలా సంతోషంగా జరిపించాలని నేను కోరుకుంటున్నాను.
Yeah. She's seeking blessings from all of
Namaste.
us, and she's very happy that she was able to do this here. Yeah, thank you.
Dhanyala Narasimha Rao. Dhanyala Narasimha Rao.
ధనియాల నరసింహారావు.
Dhanyala Narasimha Rao.
Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Lakshmi Nrsingadeva, if you so desire. Please keep Danyal
Danyala
Nrsinga
Nrsimha
Rao Prabhu at your lotus feet and bless him eternally. Thank you for considering our request. Haribol.
We also have, thank you, Mataji. We also have her daughter who is visiting here from New York, and we're welcoming her daughter, so Pushpavati Mataji's granddaughter, Dhanya Gopika, who was named by Vaisesika Prabhu to ISV. And very auspicious fact about this beautiful child, her mother read the entire Srimad Bhagavatam while she was expecting, and we're very happy to have them here at ISV.
Good evening. Good evening. We are very happy to hear. I never expect that I'm here today, but and we are also here to get the blessing for my daughter, who named her. Yeah, Dhani Gopika. Yeah, that is.
Dhanya Gopika read the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Monika Mataji read the entire Srimad Bhagavatam when the baby was in the womb, and His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu named her Dhanya Gopika. Thank you, Prabhu.
Stand here. No, what happened? Okay.
Please bless my mother.
Please bless my mother.
Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Lakshmi Shingi Dev, please always protect Dhanya Gopika, make her a great devotee. Please protect the whole family. Hare Krishna. Lord, praise Him.
We also have Vrinda, who is sponsoring for her mother, and she would like to seek all the devotees' blessings, and she wants to serve all the Vaishnavas. She'd like to seek your blessings today. Is Vrinda here? No? All right. Okay. We also have one more anonymous devotee who is sponsoring the feast and asking for blessings on the occasion of their birthday. All right. So before we proceed to Prashadam, we'd like to welcome all the newcomers who are here at ISV for the first time. It's always wonderful to have you here, and please reach out to any of us if you would like more information, if you have any questions, and we'd be glad to serve you. Hare Krishna. Now we'll announce the sponsors.
Hare Krishna. Today's Prashadam is cooked by Ananda Mataji, Divyanand Prabhu, Gopi Priya Mataji, Shama Bhakti Prabhu, Shama Karuna Mataji, Shalini Mataji, Santosh Prabhu, Shriram Prabhu, Vijay Damodar Prabhu, and Vaishnavi. And the cleaners are Balaram, Advaita, Swaraj, and Bharat.
Haribo!
Now, after we have the Prashadam prayers, Prashadam will be served in to-go boxes, which you can take home and honor. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming.
Hare Krishna. Sharira vijaja jotendriyata heka jibe pille vishasho sogare dharma jeti bhayati loba moisu durmati take jeta katita shankare Krishna bodha doyamor ori bhare jihvajan shaprashadana dilobaha Shayandamrita pao Radha Krishna Gunagao Preme Dako Shri Chaitanya Dita Paire Kadina Shanti Pure Prabhu Advaitira Gare Dui Prabhu Ojane Boshilo Shakori Ashwadana Prabhu Bole Bhakta Gana Eshak Krishna Ashwadilo Heno Shakashwadane Krishna Prema Aise Mane Se Preme Koro Ashwadam Jarabudi Parihari Prasara Bhujana Kori Hari Hari Bolo Sarvajan Hari Hari Bolo Sarvajam Abshare Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Sopapunya Vatam Rajan Vishwasuna Vijay Prasade Sarva Dukha Nam Hanirasopajayate Prasanache Taso Yashu Bhudipaya Vitistate Tvayopa Bhukta Sraganda Vasalankar Charchita Uchishta Vojino Dasa Tavamayam Jayemahi Bhagavat Shri Mahaprasadaki Barhapidam Natavaravapu Karnayo Karnikaram Vibradvasa Kanaka Kapisham Vaijayantim Chamalam Randran Venor Adhara Sudaya Purnayan Gopa Vrindaranyam Swapada Ramanam Pravishad Gita Kirti Tavakatam Ritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Shavana Mangalam Shrimaratatam Bhuvigrananti Ye Buridhajana Krishnot Kirtana Gana Nartanapa Pato Jani Prajita Shadbhakta Valihamsa Chakramadupa Sheni Viharaspadam Karnanandikaladvanirvahatu me Jiva Marupam Gane Shri Chaitanya Doyani Deta Valasa Lila Sudasaruni Kelondunita Kedaya Vishadaya Pramila Damodaya Shamyat Shastra Vivadaya Rasadaya Chitarpito Madaya Shashvat Bhakti Vinodaya Samadaya Madhurya Maryadaya Shri Chaitanya Doya Nideta Vadaya Bhuyaramando Daya Shri Vishnu Shavane Parikshira Bhavad Vaisesika Kirtane Pralada Smarane Tarangri Bhajane Sri Pritu Pujane Akrurastra Vibandane Kapipatir Dasyeta Sakyarjuna Sarvaswamani Vedane Balirabu Krishna. One more time. Vasatmani Vedane Balirabu Krishna Piresham Para Go Premanande Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. Please come take prasadam. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Prasadam was served just outside this door in the picnic area. Hare Krishna. Thank you.